This season for Desmond Bane was a very interesting one in his NBA career. We started the year talking about how he could potentially make his first All-Star appearance close to home in Indianapolis, Indiana. And we ended the season talking about another Desmond Bane injury. We got to talk about all these things, all the greatness from his 2023-2024 season, and the one flaw in his game that still needs to be corrected in order for him to join the top tier of NBA players. Coming up right here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for tuning in with me on today's special episode of Locked On Grizzlies on this solo edition as we talk all things Desmond Bane. So if you like Desmond Bane, you tuned in to the right show on today, the right episode, that is, of Locked On Grizzlies, because we appreciate you guys for tuning in each and every day and making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen always with us. Remember, continue to like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, and all of those good things, because today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go because this fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for turning your friends with as well. So download the Monopoly Go now, free on Google Play or the App Store. It's game on. Game on now as we talk about Desmond Bane and his, I think the word is adventurous, his adventurous NBA season. Just to sum up how this season went for Desmond Bane as quickly as possible here. Started the season pretty much healthy. We know all the injury things that happened with him last season with the foot, where he hurt his foot early in the season, missed a lot of time. Came back, played the rest of the season, but his foot was never 100% healthy for the remainder of the season. I think he underwent an offseason procedure to get that foot corrected after last season ended. So came back this season feeling much better and started off playing well. I mean, it was a great start to the season for him. And then the injury bug started to get to him as well. Had an ankle injury, grade 3. Took him out for a couple months, came back, played 5 games. That was all she wrote. That was Desmond Bane's season. He played 42 of a possible 82 games, so barely above half and nowhere near the NBA's 65 game minimum in order to be eligible for awards. So injuries kind of, again, I mean, we could say this for a lot of different players, but Desmond Bane is one of those players. Injuries kind of robbed us of what I felt like was a special season in the making. We saw some really good progress from him as a player. And that's what we're going to talk about in the first segment. We're going to break that down in the first segment. We're going to talk about some things that didn't go as well for Desmond Bane in the second segment. Now, I want you, look, some of you might not want to, some of you get tuned in, you tune out, you're here and there throughout the show. Make sure you stay tuned for the third segment because I think we got some good stuff there about Desmond Bane's biggest offseason goal. I'm going to drop some real good numbers and stats on if you're one of those people who think Desmond Bane will be or can be an NBA All-Star, the third segment will be for you. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. But get into the good that we saw this season from Desmond Bane. As I alluded to, he played 42 games, and in those 42 games, the man was good. I mean, it was a career year in the making for Desmond Bane. 23.7 points per game, 5.5 assists, both well above his previous career highs. So career high numbers in those areas, as well as continuing to shoot the ball well from three-point range. Over 3 made three-pointers per game on a 38% three-point shooting clip. High shooting, efficient shooting numbers. And what stood out to me more than anything was how he embraced the bigger load. We've always seen Desmond Bane as kind of the sideman, right? Jaren Jackson Jr., we've seen him take over a lot of games. We've seen John Morant take over a lot of games. This season, in a small sample size, we got to see Desmond Bane take over some games. Go back to that game, and I know it was the Pistons, but hey, he did it against them. Like he put up a big night against them, and I think it was very noteworthy. A career scoring night. Desmond Bane had a 49-point game in December against the Detroit Pistons. And go back, look at that game, because the Pistons were giving the Grizzlies a run. The Pistons could have won that game, and we know how ugly that would have looked at the time and now, reflecting back on it. But that Pistons team played really well, and Desmond Bane simply said, y'all ain't beating us. Y'all ain't getting one of those few wins that you got for the season against us. 49 points in that game, and then I think he had 8 assists as well. So when I talk about putting the team and embracing a bigger load, so many examples of it throughout the season. I think back to a game where Desmond Bane first came back, right? After the grade 3 ankle sprain. Hurt his ankle, I think it was January 12th. Didn't get back to March the 16th. First game back, Desmond Bane does not look rusty at all, by the way. Looks pretty good in his first game back. But it's not the fact that he looked pretty good. It's the impact that he had. And this was pretty much the case all season long. I want to get more to that first game back, and then I'll circle back to all season long, kind of the impact that Desmond Bane had on the floor. A 6-point loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Plus 11 when he was on the floor. This is March 16th, first game back. And that really stood out to me because you saw the difference when he was on the floor. The Grizzlies were 17 points worse. Just that's all it took. But when he was on the floor, they were excellent. They were good enough to beat the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were that good. That's how good he was. And the impact, it was that way pretty much all season. Even if you go back to the beginning of the season, I know we talk about the first 25 games a lot, right? The Grizzlies started 6-19 in that stretch. It was a lot of Jaren Jackson Jr., a lot of Desmond Bane carrying the load because Marcus Smart even got hurt early on in that stretch, I think after about 10 or so games. But what we saw was Taylor Jenkins started to rely on staggering those two players. Desmond Bane would be in the game, play a lot of the first quarter, and Jaren Jackson Jr. would go out. When Jaren Jackson Jr. came back in, Desmond Bane would take his break, vice versa. Pretty much most of the game, that's how the Grizzlies would operate until late in the fourth quarter, and, both guys be in maybe late in the second quarter, third quarter, little stretches like that. The fact that Desmond Bane and those stretches, I think the team looked better around him than they did around Jaren Jackson Jr. It really stood out to me. And I think it's going to stand out for the Grizzlies going forward because we saw it. I mean, when John Morant got back, how well the team played. And that brings me pretty much to the second thing that stood out to me about Desmond Bane. We're talking about how he carried the load so much. How about the way that he sustained his numbers? There was a 10-game window without John Morant. I mean, with John Morant playing pretty much. He played 9 games, so the Grizzlies was 6-3, but it was a 10-game window because he missed 1 game in that stretch. Desmond Bane's numbers actually were better than they were in the games without Ja. As hard as that is to believe, and we saw, I think there was 5 consecutive games where Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and John Morant all scored 20 or more points collectively. So we saw the trio working in unison together, but it was the way that Desmond Bane sustained his stats in that small sample size with John Morant on the floor that really showed me, okay, this isn't Desmond Bane, because outside looking in, we saw it. There were a lot of national perspectives. I wouldn't even say national pundits or anything, but national perspectives saying, brushing Desmond Bane's numbers to the side. Of course, John Morant's out. He's getting more shots, product of, the situation. But when John Morant returned, that simply wasn't the case. I just told you, when John Morant was out of the lineup, Desmond Bane 23.7 points per game, 5.5 assists per game. In that stretch where he played with John Morant, 10 games here. Check out these numbers. 24.4 points, more points per game, 6 assists. So his assist went up Not a lot, from 5.5 to 6, but it's the fact that you're playing with Ja Morant, and his assist numbers still went up as well. So 24.4 points, 6 assists per game. But then here's the best part. 50% shooting from the field, which is up from his field goal percentage. 40% shooting from three-point range, which is also up. So you get an all-around more efficient player, guy who's averaging more points and more assists playing alongside Ja Morant. And that's what I got out of that is Desmond Bane's improved season this year, the growth that he's had year by year that led to these career numbers. It wasn't a product of, hey, I got a bigger opportunity now because Ja Morant's out. It was, I put the work in the summer. I put the work in for this in the summer. I've improved every single year from my rookie year when I was coming off the bench most of the season to my second year when I finally got the starting job, got some votes for most improved, to my third season, and to my fourth season. That's what we saw kind of play out for Desmond Bane. It was a career year, without a doubt, and it was sustained with Ja on the floor. It was sustained with Jaren on the floor, and we saw even in a small sample size at the end of the season, when he played those 5 games or so, the Grizzlies were much better when he was on the floor. So his impact is going beyond just putting up, quote unquote, empty numbers and things like that. We see the impact, not only just with our eyes, but we see it on the floor, and the numbers are starting to reflect that. All things considered, like with the injuries and everything, it was a solid year for Desmond Bane at the end of the day. So kudos to Desmond Bane for a solid year. But as always is the case, everything wasn't peaches and cream for Desmond Bane. So coming up next, we're going to talk about some things that necessarily didn't go great for Desmond Bane in this season as well. So stay tuned for that. The show is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying when you hear flag on the play and things like that. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with the friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome the prizes you can unlock. And there's so much more to get. You can get some unique stickers that you can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. You get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends, or when you want to smash their buildings or heist their vaults and things like that. A lot to go around here on this Monopoly Go game. So the feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot Pachinko machine. And there's always new time events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So go check it out right now. Get off the bench and go download it now, free on the Google Play or the Apple Store right now. Game on at Monopoly Go. Coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about what's going on in the other side of Desmond Bane's season. We talked about all the good. What went wrong? Stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thanking you guys for tuning in. So far today, we talked about all the great things that happened in Desmond Bane's last season. Pretty much, it was so good of a season for him that the one thing that we all know that I'm going to talk about in this segment is the availability part of it. And the main question that I have is, should Desmond Bane have returned? He missed 6 weeks, right? Well, he was, I think the grade 3 ankle sprain, 6 weeks was kind of the initial diagnosis or whatever, but he missed 2 months. Desmond, he last game played was January 12th, came back March 16th, missed 2 months, and at that point, he came back, played 5 games, got hurt again, shut down for the season. Now, let me pretty much clear the air here, because I was one of those people who said, oh, yeah, I think Desmond Bane should come back. It's going to be good for the team. It's going to be good for him. It's going to be good for the players like Gigi Jackson to get a chance to play with him and play off of him and things like that. But reflecting on it, seeing how everything played out, it makes me wonder, was I right? If I would have known Desmond Bane was going to get a back injury, would I have said the same thing about him potentially playing? And the answer to that question is probably not. Probably not. I would have changed my answer. Definitely would have changed my answer, because you don't want Desmond Bane of all people. I mean, come on, this guy's getting max money now. Like, we ain't talking about that little 30th pick in the first round money anymore. We're talking about 100 190 million, 199 million dollars, 198 millions. Like, we're talking close to 200 M's right here. Like, that's the type of money that Desmond Bane is getting. So the number one thing that stood out to me is it was a very injury-riddled year for Desmond Bane. If you go through the course of his career, I remember him telling me, like, after his first couple years in the league, he had never really dealt with injuries like that before. Never really had a major injuries. First year didn't really have too much going on. Second season was pretty much a healthy season until the very end of the year against Golden State in the playoffs, as we've talked about a few times. If you've heard it pretty much at this point, was dealing with some back stuff in that series, but he played through it. And then it wasn't until, his third season when he had the foot injury that was the first time Desmond Bane has missed like an extended period of time in his basketball life, for an injury. And he was known at TCU. He pretty much played every game over the course of his 4 years there. So that was adversity for him. And, he gets the cleanup procedure in the offseason or whatever. And he comes back this season, pretty much starts the season healthy, gets the grade 3 ankle sprain. You play basketball long enough, you get ankle sprains. You don't always get a grade 3, but that was just his luck. Bent his foot coming down, and grade 3 ankle sprain. Missed a lot of time. Now let's get to the part about him coming back. And he came back, and he hurt his back. If he came back and sprained his ankle again, I probably wouldn't be saying this. Probably wouldn't even be making much of this. But the fact that he came back and hurt his back just had me thinking and reminiscing. And that's why, if you go listen to the exit interviews, and I've talked about it a little bit on here previously, one of my questions to Dez was, are those injuries similar? And the way that he compared them is, yes, the first back injury in the Golden State series, which the one he was able to play through, was a little bit more acute, which makes sense because he was able to play through it. But in this case, this is more similar to the injury that Scottie Pippen Jr. was dealing with. If you remember, Scottie Pippen Jr. got hurt in February, got the back injury, and missed a lot of time, didn't come back until the middle of March as well. So he missed a lot of time. And once we realized that was the same thing that Desmond Bane was dealing with, the same thing Scottie Pippen Jr., pretty much knew he was going to be shut down at that point. It was just more so formality of when the Grizzlies would say, hey, Desmond Bane is done. I'm not concerned yet. And again, we talked about this on a previous episode, so I won't belinger the point too long. Just want to say that I'm not concerned yet, but it is noteworthy that Desmond Bane is 25 years old. He'll be 26 here in June coming up, but he's 25, 2 back injuries. And the first one was, pretty much, as the way he put it, it sounded more like wear and tear. He said he had to learn how to better take care of his body over the course of a full NBA season. In this case, he only played 5 games. Now, you may say, hey, well, did he rush himself back in those 5 games? First game back, the one that I said that he was plus 10, plus 11 against Oklahoma City, he played 32 minutes in that game. First game back, 32 minutes after missing 2 months. Taylor Jenkins usually doesn't do that too quickly, but, Desmond Bane was not playing good in that game, and all things considered. So that's the one thing that kind of stands out to me. Should he have come back? I got another point to make as well briefly here, but before we get to that, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, just go make the switch over to Locked On Sports today, because we don't do all that. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. My last point is I don't think it's a major one. And if you will learn in this segment, basically that I think Desmond Bane's game has very little flaws. Like I could be nitpicky with his defense here, about the fact he's not really that much of a defensive playmaker, but I think that's just who he is. I don't think Desmond Bane will turn into some, Marcus Smart type all league defender at any point. I think he's very strong at the point of attack. He's going to compete. He's not going to give you nothing easy. And that's going to be Desmond Bane now. That was Desmond Bane last year. And that's going to be Desmond Bane for the rest of his career, as long as he's physically able. That's him. He's an adequate defender. He's good enough. But he's not your ace defender. He's not your guy. I think you say, hey, go stop the number one perimeter wing option. That's what the Marcus Smarts, Vince Williams, and those guys are for. But nevertheless, getting back to the offense. So, of course, it was a career high usage year and things like that. But Desmond Bane's turnover percentage did creep up as well as a career high. Again, this goes to a point that he made to me about, being blitzed more than ever, being trapped more than ever. And the result was a turnover percentage of over 11%, close to 12%, 11.7% turnover percentage for Desmond Bane this past season. So it's a career high turnover percentage. Do I think it's cause for alarm? No. But it is something that happened this season. So teams will use that film. Like how can teams take advantage of that going forward? Because, hey, look, we know this probably isn't going to come into play much when Morant, is on the floor and whatnot. But when the Grizzlies stagger those guys, because they tend to do that. When Morant's in, Desmond Bane's out. Or when Desmond Bane's in the game and Morant's out. Okay, let's go blitz him. Let's make him. He wants to be the playmaker. Let's make him make the right play, as that playmaker. And that the result of that this past season was a decently high turnover percentage. Nothing too crazy, but just enough for us to talk about and say, I don't think it was his best. I think it could be better in that area going forward, as an NBA player. Speaking of being better in areas, there's one area Desmond Bane said is his highlight of getting to improve this offseason. We're going to talk about that here next, coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. So stay tuned for that as well. But before we get to that, today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Here's the thing about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships, and it also is what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Or you can just get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about Desmond Bane from the perspective of the offseason and what he can do. So stay tuned for that as well. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thanking you for tuning in on this Desmond Bane review today of Locked On Grizzlies. Joe Mullinax did a terrific job recapping Jaren Jackson Jr.'s season. And now, after we recap Morant together, it's my goal to recap what Desmond Bane did for the Grizzlies. And now we've done most of the recap. And now it's time to turn the page a little bit and look ahead. And we're going to recap a little bit in the process of looking ahead, because you have to do those things. And if you listened earlier in the show, I said the third segment is the segment that you want to listen to if you're one of those people who say Desmond Bane can be an all-star in the Western Conference. The area of his game that needs to improve the most is the one that I'm about to point out. If he wants to be an all-star, this is the area. I'll debate that with anybody. It's not defensively, even though that would be good. Be great if he turned into some all-league defender or something like that. But that's not the area that stands out to me as that's going to make Desmond Bane an all-star. Right now, Desmond Bane is above role player. Really good player. He's on the cusp of stardom. How does he get to stardom? Just one area of his game has to improve. Desmond Bane will even tell you so himself. Go listen to his exit day interviews. When we asked him, hey, what's one thing you got to improve on this offseason, Desmond Bane? And he pointed it out himself. I got to be a better one-on-one scorer. That's what Desmond Bane said. He wants to be a better one-on-one scorer. And I couldn't have said it better myself. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Here's why. Before we get into it, like the numbers, just the way Desmond Bane had to score changed this season. A lot of that was because Ja Morant was out, but some of that also was because teams respect him more. Like the guy was averaging, 21 points per game last season. Like teams weren't just going to ignore him after averaging 21 points per game. Like the book is out. Dude is good. Desmond Bane is a really good player. They're not going to ignore him. He's going to get different coverages thrown at him with Ja on the floor, without Ja on the floor, all of that. Like teams know that Desmond Bane has the ability. When Ja only scores 14 points one night, he has the ability to score 35 and lead the Grizzlies to a win. So with all that being said, let's go back to last season. Desmond Bane, pretty much 60% of his made shots came off of assists. 40% came unassisted. 40.2% unassisted, 59.8% came on assisted baskets. Listen to this. He went from 59.8% of his shots coming on assisted baskets to 48.3%. He went from 40% of his shots being unassisted to 51.7%. So there was a shift there where Desmond Bane now, at this point of his career, is having to go get his buckets more on his own. So with that being the case, if conventional basketball wisdom, if you got to go score more on your own, then you're getting catch and shoot opportunities, because we know when the ball's out of Desmond Bane's hands, teams are zeroed in on him a little bit more now. Like this is what separates, the Ray Allens in his prime from the Luke Kennards and the J. Reddicks of the world. Like all great shooters, the Kyle Korvers, all great shooters. But the creativity, the ability to score one-on-one, the ability to create space is what takes you to that next level. And Desmond Bane has shown these capabilities, but it has to be done at a more efficient level at this point of his career. So we just got into those numbers. Isolation-wise, according to NBA, this is stats from NBA.com. Desmond Bane, percentile-wise, finished 15. He was in the 15th percentile in the NBA in isolation scoring. That's poor, by the way, if you didn't know. That's very poor. Jaren Jackson Jr. is someone that we've pointed out has been really good in this area in the past. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. was over in the 80 percentiles last season. This year went down to 63 percentile, which is still above, most of the league. And with all that being said, like with Jaren, you talk about the players that were in that range, 63 percentile, Devin Booker, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bam Adebayo. Those were players that were in his range. Whereas when you talk about Desmond Bane being in the 15th percentile, he's around guys like Jeremy Shoshine of San Antonio Spurs, Aaron Gordon, Denver Nuggets role player who's usually pretty much in a dunker spot. Those were the players that he was around. And Desmond Bane has a much bigger offensive role in terms of scoring than those two guys. He shot 31.3% in isolation situations. His field goal percentage was 31.3%. Desmond Bane, as we've just said, was much more efficient than that all around. Behind the three-point line, 2-point field goal percentage was another career high. He's got to be a better isolation scorer because teams, the book is out. We've seen it in the playoffs. Teams are loading up on Ja Morant. Teams don't trust Jaren Jackson Jr.'s passing, so they're going to double him as well. And a lot of times it's going to come down to Desmond Bane as that third star. He's going to have to be the guy who can break a defense down and create for himself and his teammates and be a decent enough isolation scorer in those situations. That's the key for Desmond Bane. You talk about, oh, how can guys take these jumps? For Desmond Bane to go to, man, that's a really good shooting guard in Memphis too. That's a star. That's a star. It's got to be that area. That's the area that it has to be for Desmond Bane to reach his peak. You'll see, because he said it himself. I said it, and the numbers said it. So it's right there. But Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7. Covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Coming up next week on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to continue our player reviews as me and Joe Mullinax get back together, but we're going to talk about some other things as well. A lot of things to talk about as we get close to the NBA Draft Lottery coming up on May 12th. So stay tuned for all of those things as well. And remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Once again, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you next time on Locked